Hey there, everyone. Okay, this is in response to a whole bunch of different things that different people wrote on different threads about doing the overhand opposite butterfly and then going behind the head. So first, this movement here is called a behind the head butterfly. And then I know Andy suggested doing split time. I never do that, and you can tell. I think it's substantially harder, but maybe Andy was suggesting doing the split time butterfly in the front before going up, or maybe you were suggesting doing a split time version of, instead of the same time version of the opposite direction pinwheel. I wasn't actually sure which thing you were suggesting doing in split time, Andy. In any event, the theory behind the butterfly, in case you don't know, is that while from the side, the two planes look like they are the same, if you relaxed the planes, what you would see is the top plane is coming toward your face, right? It's tipping this way. And the bottom plane is tipping away from you. And this is true whether your right hand is on top or your left hand is on top. And by the way, you could do it both ways. So, if you're bored and you haven't mastered enough things, just switch the hand orientation. And then when you're going back behind your head, so Juju, this was for you, and then for Shaza, I'm so sorry, I don't know how to say your name. I've only seen it written. And Chloe, because you guys were saying, well, I think it would take off my head. And Chloe, you said it almost did. A couple of hints for how to get it back there. If you have your right hand on top in the front, then what you want to do is keep that same orientation. So imagine you grab the bottom thumb. Don't actually necessarily do that, but imagine you're holding them kind of glued together, and they both go back together and they both come to the front together. So they maintain this same orientation. And I think that might be part of why you're feeling like you need to separate your hands to come back down to the front, Juju, because when you demonstrated it, you went back behind and then you did this, which I think was to prevent the hands from clanking together. If you maintain the same orientation of the hands as you go up behind the head, it should help you maintain control of the movement. And again, this is true whether the right hand is on top or the left hand is on top, which becomes the bottom hand on the back. So if it's on top and front, it's on the bottom and the back. If you're trying to maintain the same hand on top in both the front position and the back position, that could really affect you. And then I just wanted to mention something, because when I said it was a behind the head butterfly, I think Chloe said it was an over the head butterfly, and I wanted to distinguish that you can actually do both of those things, and those are different. So Claire, the other day in your video, you mentioned something about the helicopter. This is a move I have seen called the helicopter, probably because it looks, and especially if you do it in split time, it looks a little bit like helicopter, what do you call them? The blades of the engine that help it fly. That would be an over the head butterfly. Over the head being on the parallel plane to the floor. So if you think about the 6 planes, primary planes, I mean, there's an infinite number of planes, but if you think about the 6 primary planes, there's the front plane, the back plane, the left plane, the right plane, the floor plane, and the ceiling plane. When we start working with movements that are back here, from my perspective, if it's up here, it's behind the head, which is distinguished because, like, really, your head is small, versus if you do something back here, which would be behind the back, or back here, which would be also behind the back, but it's behind the waist or behind the butt. So that's a different thing completely than this. And I think, I don't know, language matters, and it can help with specificity if you use the most specific terminology. But I would say that over the head is not the same as behind the head. So I would just distinguish those two things, because you could take your, let's say you start in an overhand butterfly here, right? So this is on my front plane. I'm gonna bring it to the overhand butterfly that goes behind the head. And then, watch, I can collapse the plane and then make it horizontal plane, which is now an over the head butterfly. And then if I keep sliding it down in front, I've now brought it into an underhand opposite butterfly in front. That wasn't too confusing. Underhand being distinguished by coming up from the bottom, overhand being distinguished by going in from the top when you look at coming down the center. So if it comes up from the bottom, underhand opposite, because they're both in opposite direction, versus coming down from the top, overhand opposite. Now, another thing that I saw was, I think, Chloe, you were doing this and I said, have you tried, instead of crossing the hands, stacking the hands like this? And I think that that can be useful. I mean, this can be very useful, say, if you wanted to do a crossing thread the needle, which is super fun, versus a stacked thread the needle, versus just a subtle thread the needle. So those were all thread the needle. All you do, my favorite phrase in Poi, all you do is, Andy, I really liked when you used that in your comment, all you do is have one go up while the other one's going down. That is true. That's how you create split time. All you do is, all you do to create a thread the needle is switch the hand that's on top. So if I move closer to the camera, this is my right hand. My right hand's on top, my left hand's on top, my right, my left. So this is a thread the needle. It is not the same expression as this, but technically they are doing the same general movement, even though you're exaggerating what the body is doing when you do this one versus this one, which is much more subtle. So I do think, Chloe, this sort of arm, Jesus, I think I did not a Poi. This sort of arm thing that you were doing, I think has its place. I just would encourage you, for your own practice, to try working on it so that each hand stays on its own side of the midline with just a slight bit of overlap in the stack. And then, you know, for added control and to prep you to learn the thread the needle, you can switch the hand that's on top. So I prefer my right hand on top in overhand, and my left is not as strong. So I like to practice into my weakness, but perform from my strength. The other tip I would give in terms of not taking your head off, the general rule, this is counterintuitive from my perspective. When you think about the Poi spinning near your face, it seems like this is really dangerous, but the reality is this is more dangerous and more likely to hit your face with the ball than this. Because if you look at where the center of rotation is, the center of rotation is really close to your face. So the closer you keep your hand to your head, the less likely you are to smack or thwack your face. So as a general rule of thumb, if you try and keep it as tight as possible to your body, to your face, it's less likely to actually thwack you. Like this, much more likely to thwack you. Like, look at where the rotation is relative to my face, right? It's much easier to hit there. So that might be another tip to help you guys with feeling less fear as you're working over your head. And then the one thing that I would really encourage you to do as you're working with it is just be bold and brave and accept face thwacks happen. So the best thing that you can do is arm yourself with Poi that are friendly. If you do not have face thwacking friendly Poi, I recommend you get them. So for example, contact Poi, in my opinion, not ideal. I mean, if I said less than ideal, that would be being generous. I think tennis balls are not great either. Although with tennis balls, at least you can put a slit in the ball so that if it hits you, the ball will collapse, which will absorb some of the energy. Contact balls are just kind of the worst, in my opinion. Well, no, the beaming balls. This was a product that used to be sold like 25 years ago, and they were made of hard case plastic. They were like the first LED Poi. They had like 6 lights in them, and they were made of the same material that helmets for motorcycles are made with, and when those hit you, you got a bruise. So those are probably worse than contact balls, but other than that, I would say try and get something soft for yourself. I have instructions on my website about how to make Poi from household items, and you can make them so that they're counterweighted so that you'll be able to do tosses nice and easily. And then one other thing came up, Juju, I think you said something about your hair getting in the way. I have a video on my website about hairstyles. They are mostly modeled after Princess Leia because she had all those lovely tresses, but they were it was bound mostly tight to her head in most of the in many of the hairstyles. And that might be a helpful thing to look at if you're struggling. It's a practice getting used to dealing with the mop. So I completely understand. This is my first time having long hair doing Poi, really, because I started cutting it off when I went professional because I was fire dancing so often. It was just a pain to clean and deal with. So I understand it's challenging. All right, I hope this is helpful. Have a great day, everybody.